Are you ready to step into the best possible future awaiting you? One present and thousands of different futures. Welcome to the Soul Mechanic Show with Roseanne Kulik, owner of The Perfect Rose. Rose's spiritual journey has transformed her life, and she's here to help you create that same transformation. Her mission is to guide you in building a strong foundation, connecting with your unique gifts, embracing your authentic self, and discovering the magic within to create the life you truly desire. So please, welcome the host of the Soul Mechanic Show, Roseanne Kulik.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Roseanne Kulik, and I'd like to welcome you to the Soul Mechanic Show, live streaming here on Bold Brave TV. We're live streaming on multiple platforms, so I look forward to serving you today. And let's have some fun today with our topic, because we have an interesting topic today, and it is breaking free of dogma from within religion and spirituality. That's going to be our topic today. But first of all, I wanted to say I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. This is my first show since the holiday, and I want to wish everyone a happy new year. And anyone that watched my first show, I appreciate any of the support that you've given me, and some of my friends that enjoyed what I had to say. And this is going to be another spontaneous one, so let's see how it all plays out. But I did rewatch my first show today, and there are a couple things that I think I wouldn't mind covering before we move into this topic. And first of all, I did talk about the soul mechanic, why I was calling myself that, or why I perceive that in myself now at this point in my journey. For many years, I used the keyword psychic and healer, to draw people to me, because I do use my psychic abilities when I work with people. So I wanted people to actually have a part of themselves that actually believed in psychic ability to even consider working with me. But over time, all the different modalities that I've studied and facilitated for others, what has happened over time is I become all of those modalities. So say for example, if you were to go to a restaurant and you were to look at a menu, sometimes people will say, well, I want this and I want that, or I want this. And, they actually kind of think that I'm those separate modalities. But actually what's happened in these past many years of facilitating for others, it's almost like I have become all of those modalities. And out of love for my clients and myself, the reason why I call it a soul mechanic is because of the fact that if you were to bring your vehicle in for a repair, and the mechanic were to look at your car and say, well, this is a 3-hour job, you would never tell them that you'd only want them to work on your vehicle for half an hour. So and I feel like that's really what my work has become. Is sometimes people will, I think with the word psychic, unfortunately we've did this to ourselves on some level with us offering shorter sessions. But I think we just have a yearning to assist people so much, and maybe open their mind to different ways of being facilitated for that. Sometimes a person thinks that a half hour, might be enough. And I've said this to my clients over the years. It's not that I can't assist you in a half an hour. I just might not assist you as much as I would like to with the situation that has, that you're coming to me with. And that's only because of the fact that I do seem to access a lot of different information, and I do like to incorporate energy work, because I felt when I grew exponentially on my journey, it was when I started bringing in energy work and not just changing my thoughts. And I do believe in my heart, this is where I can appreciate every teacher I've ever studied, be it, the Abraham Hicks teachings, and various other teachings on my journey. I will say that I've been really thinking, I always say this to my clients and anyone I share any information with. If I do share anything about any teacher I've ever studied, I will say I love every teacher I've ever studied. I just love them because I feel each one of them contributed to my life in their own unique way. And I hope that when I make an impact on people's lives, I'm hoping that it'll be the same way for them too. Um, I just feel that my crystal healing teacher, basically said that there was a book that we had purchased in one of the classes that she taught. She said these people put their souls into those books, and I believe in my heart a lot of the people on this journey that have contributed to my life put their soul into whatever contribution they made to me, and I want to honor that when I share any of the information that they imparted to me, or how I maybe processed it or understood it, and how I like to combine it with other things that I've come to know, and that's when I guess it becomes my own. Anyway, so that's about the soul mechanic thing. Um, I also wanted to just mention, I kept talking about universal principles, and I think I'm not necessarily sure if that's what we're really going to get into today, but just know that I may be referring to some of them as we move through this. But I did notice I never really got a chance to explain that. I think I was resisting explaining that fully because I think it would have taken up a considerable amount of time. So, well, one of the universal principles that I did want to talk about is the fact that we have free will. So we are powerful spiritual beings, and we were given a gift when we came to Earth, and that is that we have free will. We have free will to be close to our Creator or Source or not. We have the right to choose. There may be other planets where that isn't necessarily the case, but those of us who have come to Earth, we are actually spiritual beings having a human experience here on Earth, and we also have free will, which means we have a right to say yes or no, and for assistance even. So I do believe in my heart too that each of us come in with light beings, be it angels, guides, that are assigned to us, and from my understanding, they can only interfere with our free will if it would interfere with our life ending at a time that might not necessarily be appropriate yet, because we might have contracted to stay here for a period of time and we have certain exit points. From my understanding, we have certain exit points, so that's the only time that these beings can actually uh, can actually interfere. But if because of the law of free will, we don't necessarily, like, they can't help us unless we give them permission. Sorry about that. I got lost for a second here. Anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about dogma today. Uh, so I was raised Roman Catholic, and my perception, I'm sure that a lot of people who were raised in any way, shape, or form with religion might have, been conditioned in various ways of. So I'm going to just ask you to just stop for a moment and just breathe. And I just want you to think about in your present reality right now, like your perception of what your higher power, was when well, maybe not necessarily now, when you first came onto this earth. Now, some people might not have been raised with religion. Some people might have been raised without any of that at all. But what was your perception of this world? I know for a fact with religion that I was raised with, it was a lot about, well, there was talk of hell. There was basically that you were going to get maybe punished, like I know for a fact that when I was a child, my perception through some of the things that I was taught is that that it was a punishing God, but at the same time, truthfully, I always felt God was different to me. My perception of my higher power has always been it's a loving God. So this is where it was very confusing to me as a child, and even growing up and asking various questions. So um, I I did experiments. I would do different experiments with different things. So I think what was a little bit confusing to me is my parents were open to believing in other lifetimes, like reincarnation and different things like that. So even though I was raised with the Roman Catholic religion, there was also these other pieces that were kind of brought into my reality as well. So let's say, for example, Buddhism. I'll give you an example with Buddhism. um, my perception of karma was that I hurt you. So, say, for example, if you do believe in reincarnation, I hurt you in another lifetime. So, in this lifetime, you hurt me. I hurt you, you hurt me. I hurt you, you hurt me. And years later, I would come to or say, for example, or the fact that someone could be reincarnated and kind of regress, like say, for not necessarily regress, but go into a cat, or they could go into a snake, or they could there's some different ideas of what initially I perceived Buddhism to be from some of the books actually I even read too, with the fact that like if you did something bad, well, now you're gonna become a snake, type of a thing. I, all I can say is it sure seemed like it was a punishing God, whatever what God was, whether it was filtered through traditional religion, like the Roman Catholic religion, or with Buddhism, with like, geez, if I mess up, I could be a snake. Like, this is kind of scary, type of a thing. I know I'm laughing about that, but I mean, my innocence as a child. I remember when my grandfather passed away, my nono passed away. That was my first relative that had left Earth, like that had died, and when I was a young child, and I remember I found this cat like in my grandparents' neighborhood, and I actually said to my mom, "Can we take him home? Maybe it's Nono reincarnated in a cat." Like, I mean, this was where some of my naivety and ignorance, of how some of these things really work. Years later, I would understand a little bit more as I went more deeply on my spiritual path. So we'll talk a little bit about um, my parents. For some reason, this is the thing. The real story I wanted to talk to you guys about, one of the really important ones, will be with my Reiki master later on in my journey. But I just wanted to give you a little bit more background before we get to that point, because I think it's really important to educate people. Because sometimes when we get into our spirituality, the spiritual aspect of things, we actually think it's going to be different than religion. And in some cases, there's some dogmatic stuff that can go on in there too. And I think the whole beauty about this journey is as you keep growing and opening your mind, and if you start really accepting some of the things that are taught, I call myself a non-conformist. So I just want to be clear here. They are letting me know that we're getting ready for a break. So I might leave it with the non-conformist, and then I'll give you a little bit of a more of an understanding of that in just a moment. So we're just going to take a brief break here, and we'll be right back. Well, hi. So, a nonconformist. What is a nonconformist? In my heart, as I kept growing and learning different things, what I really realized was that some of the biggest problems I had seen were, be it whether it was someone from a religious perspective or maybe even an atheist, was that, you know, that they had tunnel vision. They thought my way is the only way, and this is why I really, I'm going to make reference to, say, for example, some Jehovah Witness, like, they come to your door and they're very clear and they want to save. And I think, I have to give them credit for that type of a commitment, right? So, but the key element is I feel like this is what's caused so many problems on this planet, is the fact that everyone just thinks that their way is the only way. So that was why whenever I immersed myself in any form of teaching, I was looking for commonalities. I was just trying to find where was the commonality in this specific teaching and in this specific teaching and in this specific teaching. And also the questions I asked and some of the ones that were answered to me too also helped me to to fall in love more with my higher power and not necessarily be afraid of it. And this is where, say for example, my parents. So we're going to go back to my parents. My mother, you know like, was my, first of all, like, I know some people have had experiences in my reality that I've manifested recently. I've met some different people who have had experiences, and a good portion of them had had negative experiences with people that they loved that maybe were, on drugs, or, they had alcohol problems. The most challenging part of my journey was there was abuse in my between my parents, but there was no drugs or alcohol involved. This was just some inherent qualities that had happened between the two of them. There was nothing you can blame it on. We couldn't blame it on that kind of stuff. It just happened between the two of them. And, my mother was straight. She didn't smoke or anything like that. Years later, I would smoke, but my parents did not smoke or drink. And yet there was some form of dysfunction. And a lot of it had to do with maybe upbringing. It could have been the time period, where the way women were treated. Years later, I would find out, which was very wild journey for me, was through some past life work through another gentleman that ended up, and it was just unbelievable. We'll talk about that, in a bit. Maybe we will talk about that in a little bit later. So with with my mother, she actually, um, when my parents separated when I was 5. Before my mom married, she actually wanted to be a nun. So this, it just kind of tells you that the type of relationship she would have had with her perception of her higher power, and religion and all that stuff. She said if they swore, they would have to go to confession. Like, this is what they were actually taught at that time. You know, I guess what I'm trying to say, the pride that she, took in her relationship with her higher power and the religion that she was raised with. So to eventually divorce my father, and I remember when the Monsignor came to the house. Actually, he came to the house and he told her, "You could come to church, but you cannot have the host." Like, he actually told her that you can come to church, but you can't have the host. And mind you, my father was being physically abusive to my mother. There was violence involved, right? So you're telling me that, this God, this loving God, is not going to allow her to actually, pursue different things. These things, as an observer, from a child perspective, I think what it really did give me is, made me ask questions. So years later, I would get close to one of my girlfriends, and I would go with her parents to church, and I just noticed there was some hypocrisy. They would tell you to love one another, but they wouldn't actually be doing that, even in the environment itself. And this is where I was, like, at the same time questioning, going, I know in my heart that I always, when I I love Jesus. I did believe that he did do some of the wonderful things that he did, but I also was smart enough, even as a young person. I love to read. I've always loved to read, and I love to read because I think it really helps you to use your imagination. I think the reason why I loved to read when I was a child was because it helps you use your imagination. Like, you could read a book, I could read a book, and we still would have a different perception of what we read. And I also realized at a very young age that everything that's ever been written, be it whether a Bible or anything like that, has filtered through another human being. It's not like there was no guarantee that anything that's ever been written is actually the truth. It's actually anything that's been written has been filtered through the person who's writing it and conveying that information. And on top of it, even the person reading it, there's no guarantee, because they see it through their filters, of things. They're going to actually understand what the other person was trying to convey. So I remember thinking like that as a child. But see, when I was a child, I kind of liked reading for that reason. But I also realized that pretty much everything on this planet that's ever been written has been, it's just filtered through somebody else. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be true. Anyway, that was something that I'm just planting a seed and asking you to ask yourself that question. Anyway, so years later, I would go on a certain part of my journey, and truthfully, I did ask questions about, like, say, psychic ability and different things like that. Because my father was open to different things and my mother was open to different things. I feel like I always kept doing experiments. I used to do experiments to see how I could function on minimal amounts of sleep. I was an odd kid, let's put it that way. And after my father was into all natural stuff, because he was pursuing this alternative lifestyle even at that time, which we're talking quite a few years ago. We're talking late 60s. So which was pretty progressive and pretty, I'm sure, odd during that period of time. So much so that he actually, like, when my parents separated, we had natural soaps. So we only used natural soaps. But after my parents separated, my mom couldn't access those soaps anymore. So actually, for me to have a bath, and I would actually be allergic to regular soap. Like, I would itch, and somehow something inside of me knew that I had to change that. So I made a decision that I wasn't going to be allergic to it anymore, and it went away. That's how it changed. And then years later, I would end up being allergic to something else. I don't know. My computer's okay. It's sounding hot. Um, years later, I would end up being allergic to something else, and I just told myself I wasn't going to be, and it went away. So somehow inside of me, ever since I was pretty young, there was a part of me that always knew some of these other things, that's how powerful we are, that we can actually change our mind. And I feel like this is the part where I think it can be challenging when it comes to being raised with a certain, be it whether it's a religious upbringing, or even I had a flash today too. It's not just your religious upbringing. It could also be like, your ethnic background too, right? Like, my mom was raised Italian, my father was Polish and Ukrainian. Like, there's some cultural things going on. There are belief systems that go with that. Years later, I would find out that we, first of all, we came here to create. Second of all, this work really is about busting limiting thought processes, and we don't realize how many of them we have until we start looking at them. And it's, first of all, with religion itself, and then even in spirituality, you're going to find that there are different phases. I found for myself personally that there are different phases. At one point, you're just wrapping your mind around the fact that you're a spiritual being. At a certain point in my journey, I was led to some information. I'll give you an idea about that. So we're questioning. I went through a period of questioning about. Okay, so It's supposed to be this loving God, right? So we got this loving God, and then, but at the same time, if I screw up, is going to put me. I'm going to go to hell. If I don't take responsibility, like think about it logically. Like, well, if you're that loving, well, then why would you give me a choice and you're going to punish me anyway if I don't make the right choice? It doesn't really make sense. So we've got that, and then we're going to go to years later. What I discovered too on my journey is the past life stuff. So we've got some past life stuff. Now, like I said, initially I thought karma was I hurt you, you hurt me. A lot of people think karma is I hurt you, you hurt me, I hurt you, you hurt me. Years later, I would end up learning that what karma is actually, what I've found out with karma. Now, there is a potential sometimes I hurt you, you hurt me. This is going to, that past life gentleman. So, what happened was I allowed myself to be attracted to a very toxic relationship. And the main reason where that happened, and this is why I'm very careful with the work that I do when it comes to readings, was I had a woman that did some healing work with me, and she did a reading for me and with tarot, and it ended up in the cards it said I was going to meet a blonde man, and I turned the first man, even though I didn't really like him, the first man that I ran into that was the blonde man, I turned him into the guy. And it ended up, I didn't even like him when I first met him. And I probably should have paid attention to that, but I was more disconnected at the time. And it ended up being one of the most toxic relationships I've ever experienced in my life. Not that I've had that many of them, but I just know in my heart, I forced that relationship to happen because of a tarot card reading that I misinterpreted because of where I was at myself personally through some life experiences that I had at that time. I wanted to turn him into the guy. And at the time, I was in the middle of that relationship. I started going to a little store in that town, and it ended up the lady took a lot of interest in me. And there was a gentleman, and she knew that I had gifts myself and wanted to share different ways for me to help myself. But there was a gentleman there that did some past life work, and even though I had believed in past life work, I hadn't really seen past lives of my own up till that point. I was in my mid 20s, probably late, moving into my later 20s. And I will never forget that experience. So he wanted to talk me through a meditation. I had meditated on and off for many, many years, but at that point, because of the toxic relationship, and at that point, there were some drugs involved in that relationship. And in fact, I did blame a lot of stuff because I didn't have that much experience on drugs with drugs, and being, I kept blaming everything on the drugs. Actually, I kept blaming all of the weird behavior with him on the drugs, and that's why I kept going back trying to solve this problem. Anyway, long story short is I go for this to this gentleman, and he tries to talk me through the meditation. I said I can't do it, so he goes for me. This was the wildest part. He went into a meditative state for me, and the first was for that relationship, and he showed me 4 different lifetimes that were orchestrated with this gentleman, or 3 for sure. I know 3, sorry. And each one of them, the pattern was similar, but there were different time periods. So it was almost like, well, he could be a dick in this one, but he could be even a dickier one in that one, because it was a long time ago when the rules were different. And then there was, oh, he could be a dick in that one. We can be even dickier in this one, type of a thing. So the pattern, so it wasn't I hurt you, you hurt me. It was, excuse my language, same different day. It was just a repeat, and it was a repeat. So we agreed to repeat over again until I figured out what I was supposed to do with it. And he basically said, in those other lifetimes, truthfully, I died in each one of them. He warned me, don't so badly, I died. He said, so basically leaving him, if I wouldn't leave him, it would mean death for me, right? But anyway, we have to get ready for a break right now. And So so the next one is he does end up reading about my parents, and it was pretty wild what he I did get out of that experience with my parents. I cried. I couldn't believe how much I cried because of the fact of what he connected there for me was it was just amazing. The pattern, he could gather the pattern from the experience I was having during this life. And then on top of it, he also got to explain to me the patterns that happened between my parents as well. So I'm just so grateful that I opened my mind to those things. So we're just getting ready for a break right now. Um, I will get back to you in just a little bit, and I'll continue this story from here. Thank you. So the wildest part with what this man gave me with about my parents, it was just unbelievable what he described to me because of the fact that my mom confided a lot in me, and basically in another lifetime, in another lifetime, my my mom chose her family over him. So that was why in his mind he felt he resented her because and because they were different religious backgrounds, and because they were different ethnic backgrounds. These were the reasons during different time periods where and even in this time period there were different, there were different religious backgrounds too, because I it doesn't matter. I can't remember which. It's just not coming to me right now, but the patterns were the same. The patterns were the same, but he actually, that was why my father was actually physically abusive with my mother, but I actually spoke to his girlfriend that he went out with after for a few years. As an adult woman, I asked her, I said, was my father physically abusive to you? And she said, no. So this is the part too where when we get too rigid with, this is the part where I'm wanting to educate people. And this is what I really learned on my journey too, is that, we have a tendency in our society to lump everyone together. We go, oh, well, that person's a narcissist, so they're a narcissist with everyone. That person is a this, so they're this with everyone. That person is a that. What I've really come to learn as I ask these questions and move past a lot of these different things on my journey is this. Some people agree to play certain roles for you in particular. That doesn't necessarily mean that is who they are with somebody else. And that's what I've really learned from my relationship with watching my parents. And at the same time, even when I look at my clients, that's why I really try my best to be really careful and fair and objective, even with the characters in their reality. There is not always like there's the potential sometimes just because someone's playing the bad guy over here with you doesn't necessarily mean they play the bad guy over there with the other one, because they have different a different agreement. There's a different role to play. But anyway, for some reason I got into that to just saying, when I say about dogma, it's just open your mind to the fact we've come here to have different life experience. And when I got into my spirituality, I started looking at, oh my God, like the pollution, oh my God, this or whatever. And my Reiki master said to me, like basically, this is she would her contribution to me was the fact that she was a Course in Miracles person, and with the Course teachings, it was a little bit more about you know, not fighting against certain things. Like, the more you fight against something, the more you keep it alive. Everything's all about shifting the way you look at things, shifting the way you look at I think the beauty in all of it is you start to realize. I'll give you an example. One of the things that it popped in my head just recently, and I'm just going to suggest for you guys to apply some of these things in your life, depending on where you're at on your journey. I want you to think. So, did you ever think about a car at, like, you're researching a car, you fell in love with a car, oh my God, I really want this. My brother loved BMWs, right? I didn't really care that much, but he liked them, right? So after he passed away, I started researching his car because it needed to be repaired. So I started researching BMWs. I swear, after I started researching BMWs, I saw BMWs every time I went out. Stop sign. Every time I was at a stoplight, there was a BMW. So I'm going to suggest to you, just to show you how powerful you are as a creative being and where you place your focus. So this is another universal law, that wherever we place, our focus, the universe will kind of oblige, right? So this is why we have to be so careful when it comes to some of the conditions that have had imposed on us, because of the fact that it starts solidifying in your life. So it reflects back to you that all of these things are true. This is where it can be very confusing when you get really immersed in any type of religion, or even when it comes to some of the spiritual teachings that I have experienced on my journey. So this is why whatever you think about and you focus on, you actually get more of it, and the universe will start morphing to kind of agree. And this is where it can be really challenging, but also exciting too. So it depends on how you decide to play with that. But anyway, my Reiki master. So I ended up, my first healer was my Reiki master. This was one of the main stories I wanted to talk about today, to just show that even on your spiritual journey, or on my spiritual journey, there was some form of dogma even at that on it. And then years later, I would start to see it even too, in with different modalities that I took, or different with different teachers. And anyway, so we had it was a traditional Reiki that I did take with her. It was a first degree, and then there was a second degree. And actually, with the Reiki that I took at that time, they actually, if you wanted to take mastership, you would have had to fully commit to Reiki. You could not take any other modality. You could not have, you would have to just do that, and that's it. And at that point in my journey, as I said, I'm a non-conformist. I want to learn something. I want to grab the good from it. I want to see where the truth is in it. I want to see commonalities in all these different things. And this is why I kept studying different things, to see the commonalities in all of them, to just really see where the truth is in all of these different teachings, that were presented to me on my path, right? So I told her, I said I don't know if I can fully commit to Reiki. I feel like I'm meant to study other things. I feel like I would be limiting myself to just study, Reiki. So I ended up making a conscious decision, and I told her that, that I might not necessarily just do Reiki. So I ended up taking my mastership with someone else. In most cases, she would have kicked out others. I did also, though, I see, this is the part where it's really important for us to be humble too, as students. Anyone who's asking questions, in a lot of cases, your teacher is here to teach you, but your student is also, in some cases, going to be teaching you as well, right? So I'm just checking here because I'm wondering if we have to take another commercial. I ended up, she basically wanted me, she said, well, before you make this decision, I want you to meet the master that I studied with. And I said, I did meet the master that she studied with. And I said, I'll be honest with you. I said, I met her. I said, And she was okay. I said, but you are my Reiki master. Like, I love you. Like, if I wanted to fully commit to Reiki and I wanted to take my mastership, and at that time it was $10,000 for the Reiki mastership. I said, why should I go and study with her, the mastership, when you're the one that did all the hard work with me? I love you. And I said, what makes her better than you? Like, I said, if I were to have chosen to go in this direction, I would have chose you because you're the one that was giving me my first degree and my second degree and all the other things. Why do I want to go study with someone else? What makes her better than you? She goes, well, didn't you feel her energy? I said, yeah, I felt her energy. I said, but I still love you. I don't care. And what ended up happening was a couple years later, um, first of all, she kicked out anyone else that did study Reiki with someone else. I did take my mastership with someone else, and she still let me practice, which she would not allow anyone else to do. She was very adamant about that, but I was honest with her. And a couple of years later, she showed up at my door. I ended up, being my ex and I, we had bought a house together at the time. And she said, I just wanted to tell you, I wanted to thank you for holding this space for me, because she said, this weekend I'm making my first master. So she let go of that dogmatic belief when it came to Reiki, that she basically was you know was gonna, she had limited herself, but she ended up making a few other Reiki masters. So sometimes your student can also be your teacher, and sometimes your teacher is your teachers. We share with each other back and forth, and we help each other grow. So I I don't think a lot of people realize it this day. There's tons of stuff going on with Reiki, but I don't know if they really realize some of the experiences we had years ago when some of this information came out in the first place, like publicly, more like in the West, or, um, anyway, we're getting ready for a break. So be right back. Thank you. Thanks. So I feel like I wanted to share some of that with you, because in time, what ended up happening was I studied with another teacher, and at a certain point in your spiritual journey, people are going to say, oh, well, for you to really get this connection, you're going to have to, not eat this or not do this, and I'm wanting to encourage people, like, and this is the part, like, I love Dolores Cannon. I studied with Dolores Cannon years ago, and I know, as a facilitator for people who wanted to do the quantum, at that time when I was doing, like, the work with Dolores Cannon stuff, um, a lot of them, the way it was promoted years ago was you just needed one session, you would get all your answers. Okay, well, is that really realistic? If you want to be a healer, if you wanted to be a healer and help other people, say, for example, I had some people that came to me and they wanted to be healers, and they wanted to come for one session and miraculously heal. And it's like, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying, if you want to be a healer, you're going to expect everybody else to heal miraculously all in one shot. It's not realistic. Not everyone will be ready for that. Some of your clients will be ready for that, but not all of them will be ready for that. I feel like sometimes, even though some of the things are beautiful, and I do believe that some of the people, their modalities are lovely, I feel like we have a tendency to maybe believe too much in it. Like, that, like, who wouldn't have wanted to just have one thing and everything be hunky dory? But it depends on what you came here to experience as a soul, what you came here to do, what you came here to learn, on your journey. And anyway, when she was ended up, she was facilitating in the class with us, and someone had come up to practice, and they're like, well, I only do smoothies. And I remember her response, because see, this, they read it in a book, because one of her clients that was in one of the books, that only, that was guided to do smoothies during that time, people were taking those things literally, and trying to impose that on themselves. And I guess all I'm trying to say is this: there are going to be certain times in your journey you're going to study with certain teachers. They may suggest for you to eat certain things, or you may come across as, or make some decisions yourself at a certain point in your journey to do this or to not do that, because it increases your connection. I am not here to discourage you from doing that, but I'm also here to encourage you to maybe not necessarily put anything carved in stone, because of the fact that you are, as a soul, are going to grow and change. And that might be beneficial for you at this time, but it might not be beneficial for you 2 years from now. And this is the most important thing. This is where we, by busting those limiting thought processes, whether it comes from religious programming, or from your cultural programming, or from even a new way of teaching. This work, what I've come to really know, is about busting limiting thought processes. And if I'm a powerful spiritual being having a human experience here, why does it have to become to the point where I have to live with so much restriction? Like, you can't eat this, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you can't drink, or you can't whatever, because of the fact that maybe you choose not to. That's one thing, if you choose not to. But I believe in my heart, at a certain point, after you do a lot of your deep personal work, like, to get more clearly, and, there are layers of it, yes. But I also think that we came here, to enjoy a whole bunch of different things. I feel like what I've came to realize is, well, if I'm a powerful spiritual being, why can't I have sugar sometimes? I mean, it depends on whether it's something that you want to experience or not. I guess what I'm trying to say is this: give yourself permission that even if something really genuinely serves you, if it gets to a certain point where it restricts you in some way, shape, or form, just realize that, be kind to yourself. Even if you read it from somebody else and they said that worked for them, it worked for them. And if it works for you, that's wonderful. Like I say, even when I said last week, if I share a tool with you or something like that, I'm sharing, just try it the way that I've shared it with you. I'm hoping that it helps you, hoping that increases your connection. I did the crappy experiments. I did the harder versions of things. But I guess all I'm trying to say is that, like, is this. But at the same time, that's why even with my work, I'm here to help you create what you want in your life, what you want to have, not what I think you should have. Not, I might ask you sometimes. I have had clients sometimes where I'll say to them that we're working on manifesting something and it's going off the rails a little bit at a certain point. I'm going, listen, I will support you in still manifesting this as if this is what you want. I just want to check, is this still what you want? You see what I'm trying to say? Like, I love my people. I want to make sure that I'll support them in whatever they want to. I mean, obviously, like, not jumping in front of a train. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'll support you in whatever you want to create, but I also want to make sure that when I'm supporting you with, as an observer, I'll say, hey, this is, are you still sure? I might still ask, hey, I'll help you with it. I just want to make sure that you're still sure. Now they're reminding me of another spiritual teacher, because that I ended up experiencing. This will be one of my last main really big ones. There have been other ones. I will never forget when I first went to see him, and he, we were all excited. We couldn't wait to hear what he had to say, because we're all like, what's our purpose? Like, what's our purpose? Like all these other ones, you're getting all these other different things. He says, you know what your purpose in life is? And we're like waiting. And he's like, to have fun and experience life fully. We were like, what? I never heard that before. Nobody said that to me. You know what I mean? Like this one's like, in the religious stuff, I remember when I was a kid, I kept thinking, geez, I must have done a whole bunch of bad stuff to have some of this crappy thing happen to me, because I kind of believed in karma and all that different stuff. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, even though there was some religious thing in there, I kept thinking, well, gosh, like, am I getting punished by God here? And, years later, I would, you come across the information that we actually would have picked some of these experiences for us to grow, to learn. I'm not saying that they were all wonderful, but it helps you. What it helps you with is it helps you take more responsibility for it and change it if you want. But anyways, the beauty of his work was, to have fun and experience life fully. And he did teach us too that, each one of us have certain roles to play, and that a lot of the characters in our reality love us, and that sometimes he basically said to us that sometimes when someone is being mean to you or whatever, they're sent in sometimes to push you back on your path. Like there's the potential that sometimes when a character is coming in, there is the potential that you're going off track, and their job is to push you back to, or push you somewhere, different than where you're going. And, that was one of the things he taught us. I guess all I'm trying to say is, just out of love for yourself, just realize, if I'm a powerful spiritual being that has chosen to be on earth during this period of time, and you subjected yourself to these type of an environment, ask yourself important questions. What muscle am I like, what muscle was I working on? Where actually, when I left my full-time job, my guide said the muscle that I had to work on is, where you're going, you're going to have to believe in yourself no matter what anyone says. So I'm just saying to you, I've had some of, I've had to believe in myself no matter what anyone said. I had to believe in my connection no matter what anyone said. And I'm encouraging you to get so strong in your connection with your higher power, and with these truths, the real truths, not the ones that are colored by different things. I had books I was going to refer to, but I guess I went off on other areas. I guess we'll have to talk about those some other time. Anyway, I'm getting told that we don't have much time left, so I just wanted to share with you guys that I really appreciate this. I know I was trying to give you some different stories to just help you to understand that no matter where you're at on your journey, I would encourage you to really consider this, that, this work is about busting limiting thought process. That's the real part of it. And you don't realize you have one until you have one. Anyway, so my name is Rose, and you've been watching the Soul Mechanic Show. My full name is Roseanne Kulik. My website, I have two websites actually, www.theperfectrose.ca. And I also have roseannekulik.com. And I also wanted to share that I have an email address, is rose@theperfectrose.ca and rosekulik@theperfectrose.ca, for anyone that has any suggestions for the show or anything like that. Anyway, listen, lots of love to you guys. And thank you so much for watching the show with me today. And I hope some of the things I shared with you might have helped you in some way, shape, or form. Anyway.
This has been The Soul Mechanic Show with Roseanne Kulik. Tune in each week for a magical journey with you, supporting your growth and helping you create the life you truly desire. Wednesdays, 8 p.m. on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.